So good to have you back, Mel. Terrific. Thanks for coming on board. Thanks for unpacking this material. Difficult, some of it, by AJ Diaz. We're moving away from the arcade now. Here's the arcade. I'm going to show you the arcade here, and we're moving to the drum itself, looking at the drum, because the drum has been destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed. And in fact, it's a different drum today than what has been in the past. It's not going to help us with dating the inscriptions. I think we're going to go with the 1500 date for those inscriptions, but it's still important. So Mel, go and help us with this material. Let's see what you've got, and let's see if we agree or disagree. Over to you.
Okay. Right, let me just share. So as we look through the following evidence, please note as we look at it from the 16th century onwards that Umar is referred to as the builder of the Dome of the Rock. This is something we'll see again and again, which is really odd, because if there is an inscription that says that Abdul al-Malik or al-Mamun built the Dome of the Rock, then that should have been an issue that was clarified, but something else must have been written there, because everyone seems to be thinking Umar built the Dome of the Rock. Why would they say that?
Ask the question, where do you mean? Who is saying that Umar? Is it on the dome itself it's set up? Because that's not there today.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've covered this. I think it's coming up in this. We're going to actually see an inscription that refers to Umar as the builder of the Dome of the Rock.
This is a few episodes ago. You did mention that. In fact, it's one of the first episodes we have on this. You did mention that somebody from the 13th or 14th century said clearly that it's Abdul Malik who is the builder of the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah, they're all over the shop on this. They as the centuries go on, sometimes they say it's Abdul Malik, sometimes they say Umar. But at this period in time, it seems to be they're coalescing around Umar again, and this would probably indicate that it's because there's an inscription now that has clarified that it's Umar that built it, and that's why they're saying it. Okay. So why would they say that if an inscription indicated either Abdul al-Malik or al-Mamun? It doesn't make sense that people are going around saying it's Umar. Now, the antiquity or lack thereof of the dome is shown by the shape of its supporting drum, which you can see here in the middle of this picture on the right. Being a disciple of Elia Levita, Sebastian Münster was a highly educated Jew and a later supporter of Lutheranism. He publishes the first German geographical description of the world in 1526, which contains a detailed history of Jerusalem and its temple from its biblical beginnings. In it, he also attributes the Dome of the Rock to Umar, then believed to be the original structure called Temple of Solomon. So it's interesting, at that time, around the time that we said in the last episode that the inscription would have been created, this guy who has created a book on the history of Jerusalem, he's pretty clear that Umar is the person who built the Dome of the Rock. So where would he have got this from? He obviously wouldn't have just made this up, but I'd like to think he wouldn't have. It's probably that the people on the ground in Jerusalem told him that. If you're researching a book, you go to the place and you ask the locals, well, who built this? Well, this is what people were saying at that time. In 1552, another contemporary woodcut of Jerusalem is included in Sebastian Münster's Latin version of his cosmography. The octagonal drum of the Dome of the Rock appears scaffolded as though under construction. I suggest it is primary evidence for the ongoing external decorations. So I don't know if you can make it out there. Let me see, put the cursor here. Perhaps you can highlight that in some way. But that's it there. It's the drum is hidden behind scaffolding. So it would be good contemporary evidence that there's work happening on the Dome of the Rock at that time. Now, and we've got this other piece of evidence. In 1574, the geographer Georges Brun of Cologne publishes his Théâtre des Cités du Monde. The drawing is an overview of Jerusalem, which renders details very small. Regardless, the Dome of the Rock is recognizable with an octagonal main building and drum. the roof cupola appears a little different, as though the onion-shaped top was missing and was replaced with a spire. So that's it in the middle. Now, it could be down to just a bad drawing, but there's something going on at that time. There's changes afoot.
Let me just jump in here.
Yeah.
Go back there. I can see only a 6-sided building, not an octagonal side building. Do you pick that up as well? 6-sided. It's not 8-sided.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I would probably put it down to that it's just a poor drawing. I think it's not attempting to be particularly accurate. I think so. I don't know what to make of it really. I would say it's not particularly strong evidence one way or the other. That would be my take. But I think the main thing is that the onion-shaped roof is missing, and that's a bit of a peculiarity, I would say. But beyond that, yeah, I think you're right. Though
there's a steeple there with a crescent at the top. That's not there anymore. So this looks quite different. If you were to say that's the Dome of the Rock, I would say that doesn't look anything like the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah,
obviously there have been some corrections. There have been some changes, and you're going to get into that, obviously.
Yeah. So even if this was just a really amateurish drawing, it does suggest that there's something different on the ground than what we have today. I think a child would probably do a more accurate drawing if it was the same building as you'd have today. So here's another image, a book print from 1576. Again, it's the same century. A lot is going on with the building during this century. It shows Jerusalem with the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Dome of the Rock with recognizable details. While the main structure matches the modern appearance, the dome does not. At the time of the drawing, the dome was octagonal with 2 stories of window openings. Remembering the scaffold image from immediately before that time, it appears that the cupola had been raised, giving the building a more pleasing aspect ratio. The Holy Sepulchre shows with its cupola still not repaired in the background somewhere, I believe. The lower row of the drum distinguishes itself through a larger middle window that is flanked by 2 that are about a third smaller. I think the main thing I would take from this is the fact that the cupola is definitely raised above the rest of the roof. That's very different from what it is today. So there's, it's not the same building really. There's a massive lot of changes that have happened to it. Okay, so that would mean that really anything that was inside that is no longer what it is today. Now, this bit is quite interesting. Why were they so keen to keep Christians prying eyes from the Dome of the Rock? Published in 1617, Fiennes Morrison reports on his 10-year travels. After expressing his horror about the circumstances of Jerusalem, which he visited in 1596, the book contains an expansive description of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. He notes that the Dome of the Rock is shut. A.J. Juice says, travel must have been perilous at the time, with locals jumping, harassing, and abusing visitors. Jews wore red hats and were almost completely absent from Jerusalem. They had moved to the coastline. It appears that their good standing under Suleiman was long forgotten. In this large circuit, compassed all with walls, of old the Temple of Solomon stood. At this day it was overgrown with grass, and in the midst thereof the Turks had a mosque for their wicked worship of Muhammad. Neither may any Christian come within this circuit, much less into the mosque, either being a capital offence, which they say some curious Christians had tried with loss of life after they had been drawn to enter it by some Turks' vain promises. So they don't want Christians looking around inside. It's very similar to the situation with Mecca today. They don't want them on the Temple Mount. They don't want any Christians looking inside. Why are they so cagey about any Christians viewing the interior? That straight away is curious. And it's also curious because the argument is that the inscriptions are addressed to Christians. Okay, that's what we've always heard. Why would they not want Christians to see the inscriptions if they are addressed to Christians? That makes no logical sense. I don't know if you want to respond to that part.
No, no, that's fine. Continue on.
Okay. Now, Morrison's publications contain crude miniature drawings of the site and building from his hand, which is there on the right. The great traveler Signor Jacques de Villemont visits Jerusalem around this time. His book Voyage is published in 1596 and an updated version in 1602. Like all other visitors, he is told that the structure stands as Umar had built it. Even locals do not seem to have a concept of Abd al-Malik. Muslim visitors appear to not have noted al-Malik's or al-Mamun's dedicatory inscription. So it's interesting that what they're hearing on the ground is that Umar built it. And if the inscription with Abd al-Malik or al-Mamun was there, surely the locals would have said, well, it was them that created the Dome of the Rock. So that's another little bit of evidence. And notice how late this is. Villemont's eyewitness account of how the Dome of the Rock appeared during his visit is inspiring. His introduction to the building starts with remarks about the strictly enforced prohibition for Christians to enter. It tells a story of human curiosity by a Greek traveler who took the risk upon himself to sneak inside. Now, it's a bit long. I won't go into it. People can have a read of it. It's not particularly enlightening, but there's nothing about an inscription inside it. That's the main thing. However, because he mentions neither inscriptions nor subjects of the mosaics, we still cannot be satisfied whether he saw mosaics in the present state, part of it, or something different altogether. A supposed inscription directed against Christians can't be seen by its intended audience. A travel report by Henri Castella from 1600 AD contains Morrison's woodcut. The former seems to have beaten the latter to print. He too confirms that the Dome of the Rock could not be visited under threat of death. So this seems to be definitely the case that Christians couldn't enter. While he describes the tiled exterior and its luminous appearance in the sun in detail, he does not tell us about the drum. We need to imagine there is an ancient inscription inside the Dome of the Rock that is squarely directed against Christianity. It is literally addressed to them so they could read it and at once be convinced by its aggressive undertone. Muslims do not need education by these inscriptions. They do not believe in the heretical ideas that the text frets about, and yet Christians who wanted to see it were faced with death if they dared to see it without prior conversion to Islam. And he says only a religious mind could have come up with that sort of logic unless there was something to hide. So he's basically saying he doesn't buy the idea that this inscription was directed to Christians. If it were, then they wouldn't have a death sentence for anyone looking at the inscription. That doesn't make any sense. So there must be something else afoot. An interesting detail comes from Henri Baron de Beauvau, who visits the Dome of the Rock sometime before 1609, when his travel journal is published. He hired a Muslim to take measurements and describe the interior for him. He reports that the inside of the Dome of the Rock is now all white, with the exception of remnants of mosaics from old times. We do not know whether the Muslim scout fed Beauvau with reliable information and what exactly was white, but all mosaics were inside, likely worked on. I'm inclined to believe the Muslim witness here, because I don't think it makes sense for him to make up something like that. You know, surely he would have bragged about how beautiful it was inside, but what he's reporting is it mostly all white with some mosaics there. That sounds to me like they're working on the mosaics inside, and that they're trying to update it. Okay, so I think that's a strong evidence against the idea that what we see in the Dome of the Rock is from the 7th century. How could a custodian of the Holy Sepulchre be unaware of an inscription said to say Abd al-Malik al-Mamun or al-Mamun were the builder? So in 1608, Jean Vallard, the custodian of the Holy Sepulchre, delivers a 700-page overview of Jerusalem, its environs and sites. He claims it was built by Umar. Now, for someone to write a 700-page book about Jerusalem, and the fact that he's a custodian of the Holy Sepulchre, so he's well placed to know the history of the city, and yet he's also of the opinion that Umar built the Dome of the Rock. Why would he think that if there was an inscription that says either Al-Mamun or Abdul al-Malik? I think that's very telling. How can Umar still be referred to as the builder if the inscription existed back then? George Sandy's book, A Relation of a Journey Begun, written in 1610, contains an overview of Jerusalem with the very small detail of the Dome of the Rock labeled a mosque where stood the Temple of Solomon. But who built this that now stands is doubtful. Some do attribute it to Christians, others to a prince of the Arabians, which is confirmed by the Christians of these countries. And he, the Saracen Umar, next successor onto Muhammad. Notice there is an anomaly between the fact that he says the successor after Muhammad, it should be what's his name? Abu Bakr. But leaving that aside, seated it is upon Mount Moriah in the southeast corner of the city, without doubt in the very place where Solomon stood, the more eminent building consisting of an 8 square round of bluish stone adorned with adjoining pillars, the terrace above. In the midst of the shelving roof, another upright aspired, though less by far, yet the same in form and substance with the former, being covered over with a cupola of lead. So he's reporting that it's covered in lead, not in gold, as it looks today. Even that late, the author's inquiry did not lead to al-Malik as the builder, and the drum was still octagonal. Umar was presented as the direct successor of Prophet Muhammad. So I find this really hard to understand. Why would there be so much doubt about who exactly built the Dome of the Rock if there was an inscription in there? Surely it should have been the easiest answer to get if the inscription was there from the 7th century. As I say, I don't buy it. I think the easiest explanation is that the inscription about Abdul al-Malik and al-Mamun wasn't there yet. 1620, we still have an octagonal drum. Still, Umar is claimed as the builder. The Italian Bernardino Amico publishes his book about sacred architecture in 1620. His crude drawing leaves much to desire, but a separate drawing shows that the drum was still octagonal. Like every other visitor before him, he was told that Umar was the builder. Yet Amico says something that nobody else mentioned before. Large dedicatory inscriptions are very old, were mounted inside and out, attesting to the builder, Umar. So we have a direct reference now to an inscription, and on the inscription, it's said to be Umar that built the Dome of the Rock. This is literally the first year that I've heard this. This has been swept under the carpet. I'm surprised there aren't more people mentioning this, but that's a very good piece of evidence in my view. 1700s.
Just back up quickly. Just back to that slide. Hold on a minute, Mel. There's nothing on the inscriptions that we've seen that there today that say anything about Umar.
Yeah, well, we're going to actually see an inscription that someone transcribed from this time. So that's coming up later.
Okay. So what we do know, I mean, even if this is the first reference to the inscriptions, it's not the inscriptions we see today.
No. Okay. Yeah. So there was a change. Obviously, the key inscription that concerns us here is the inscription that talks about Abdul al-Malik or al-Mamun building the Dome of the Rock. So it's that portion
it's the small one by the door is what you're talking about.
No, this is still over the arcade. It's part of the 20-meter one. And I can't remember which end it comes in. I can't remember off the top of my head. But
have you got a picture of it? Do we have a picture we can show people? I'm just put this in here. So what you're talking about, Mel, is this inscription here. This is the one we're looking for, the one that has Mamun's name as the builders for this building.
Yeah. Okay. Now, 1700. This is a travel report by the Franciscan brother Noe Bianchi, and this is how he depicts the Temple of Solomon. It's very different from what we see today. and we can see the octagonal drum still in evidence. And then there's an interesting one from the 18th century, the 1720s, 1730s, and it's to do with making of tiles. Extensive restorations for the Dome of the Rock are ordered by Ahmed III from 1720 onwards. The documents in a register in the Prime Ministry archives in Istanbul includes orders, accounts and inventories that are dated between 1720 and 1736. That high-profile superintendents of construction are put in charge indicates the importance that the Jerusalem project was given. The extensive list of material includes pigments for paintings and raw materials for the local production of tiles, but no tile makers appear on the list. It does not tell us what exactly was restored or renovated, despite the fact that its costs were monumental. So whatever was going on in the early part of the 18th century, and it's believed to be to do with the Dome of the Rock, there was a lot of expense being put into this. That would certainly suggest that a large part of what we see in the mosaics, if not all of it, is due to this work that was going on in the 1720s, 1730s. Richard Pocock published an eyewitness account in a description of the East in 1745, which contains a section about Jerusalem and the Dome of the Rock. He appears to be the first to put down an architectural plan of the exterior of the building, which he describes as of mainly green tiles, which obviously is different to what it is today. Okay, so we're getting closer to what the Dome of the Rock looks like today, but not quite. Elzerius Horn was custodian of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem between 1725 and 1726, and secretary of the convent San Salvatorius between 1737 and 1738. His book with drawings of holy edifices is published in 1744. Horn's design shows something strikingly new, the drum in its modern form, top right. So it's a circular drum. That the change must have been recent can be taken from an overview of Jerusalem inside the same book. There, the drum was still octagonal. The cupola must have been replaced. So he's suggesting that there's a new dome being put in the middle of the 18th century. Now,
hold on, back up.
Yeah.
That still looks octagonal to me. I don't see where the circular part comes in.
Yeah. I think if you look at the rim underneath the drum, it looks circular. But yeah, I'd agree. I think the windows there give it the impression that they're still octagonal sides. So I don't know. That's probably a piece of evidence that we could probably throw out and say, well, actually, maybe the circular part came in later. Yeah. So it's probably not the strongest piece of evidence there. Okay. Now, the contemporary primary evidence leaves no wriggle room. The replacement of the drum was commissioned in 1720 by Ahmed III and completed by Mahmud the First, 1730 to 1754, no later than 1744, according to A.J. Jukes. And that's where we leave it today.
Right. Okay. So I'm just to summarize what you're saying here by looking at the evidence right up through the 1700s, starting with the 1526, with the Sebastian Munster, the disciple of Elia Levitas. You have a reference after reference after reference that this building is built by Umar, and that continues right up into 1608. With Vallard and also Amico in 1620. Still, the 17th century, the 1600s, you still have reference to Umar. But we're looking for the change of the drum. We're looking for where the inscriptions actually were introduced. And there's obviously, there must be something on these inscriptions that is anti-Christian or anti-Christ. That's why they don't let people to come in. And that's why, on pain of death, in case people have been killed who have been tricked to come in, you are not to see this. So that would make sense that these are anti-Christian. However, what's fascinating is that you're now coming to the conclusion that we still don't have the drum as late as 1720. Possibly that's when it gets changed, but I would disagree. That looked like more like an octagonal shape. I'm still waiting to see when that drum becomes circular, proving that they are still renovating, changing, moving. And as you renovate, as you move, you change the inscription. Now, you are going to come to conclusion, are you, at some point where you think really the dome that we see that we're looking at today, when was that created? And are you going to take a position on when you think these inscriptions were actually created?
Yeah, I am. I'm in the next episode. It's going to be called Mystery Resolved. So we're going to bring it. So we're going to bring it all together, and this is kind of like a cliffhanger, because what we're going to look at is the inscription in relation to Umar in our next video. So that's going to be exciting, and we're going to go from there.
Right. Okay. Well, you all heard it from his lips to your ears. Let's see what he has to say. This is Jay and Mel, thousands of miles apart. We'll soon be back. Over and out.